They say the beeping of hospital machines is meant to calm you. To me, it sounded like a timer ticking down. Not to the surgery, not to the pain, but to the moment I finally stopped caring altogether. The nurse's shoes squeaked softly across the linoleum as she pushed my bed toward the double doors. My gown clung damply to my skin, and the air around me carried that sharp antiseptic bite. My phone buzzed beside my leg, lighting up like a neon sign in the dark. 27 missed calls from Mom, the same woman who knew exactly where I was, the same woman who chose cake and champagne over the daughter she raised. Her last text to me was just 3 words: "We need to talk." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "We're on our way." The screen dimmed, throwing my pale reflection back at me. I wasn't crying. Not yet. Too numb for that. But numbness, I've learned, is just grief biding its time. Through the small window in the operating doors, I saw a flash of blinding surgical light. My pulse quickened. This was happening. I was going under without knowing whether anyone would be waiting when I woke. And the truth, the part that should have hurt, didn't sting as sharply as it should have, because a part of me, that quiet, dangerous part, had already started planning what would come next. The nurse glanced at me. "Got someone waiting outside?" she asked casually. I smiled. No one worth mentioning. The doors swung open, releasing a wave of metallic, icy air. The surgeon's masked face appeared over me. I closed my eyes, not for comfort, but to burn one last image into my mind. My sister's grinning Instagram selfies surrounded by birthday balloons. My mom's hand in the frame holding a glass of wine. If silence was a weapon, mine was about to be sharpened to a razor's edge. I let the anesthesia roll through me, not as surrender, but as preparation. They would remember this absence. They would feel it like a missing limb in every family picture. Because when I woke, I wasn't going to chase their attention, or offer explanations, or give forgiveness. Some deaths are carved too deep for words, and mine was going to be collected in full. Quietly, publicly, unmistakably. When I opened my eyes again, the first thing I noticed was the light. Thin morning sun slicing the wall into bands of gold and shadow. The second thing was the silence. No flowers, no card, no footsteps. Just me and the hum of machines. A nurse swept in, brisk and bright. "How's our fighter this morning?" she asked while checking my chart. My throat felt scraped raw when I tried to answer. She handed me water and then glanced at the empty visitor's chair. "Your ride coming soon?" I took a sip. "No one's coming." Her eyes softened in that way I hated. Pity settling over me like a damp sheet. "We'll make sure you get home safely." Home. The word hit wrong. Home wasn't a place. They'd proven that. Home was anywhere they didn't bother showing up. My phone lay on the tray beside me. 53 unread messages now. Missed calls had doubled. The first was from Mom, hours before I woke. "We need to talk about the insurance money." Not, "How are you?" Not, "Did everything go okay?" Just business. The rest of the messages were a blur of excuses, demands, drama from the dinner I'd apparently ruined by not existing loudly enough. My sister's lone text read, "You could have rescheduled." I turned the screen face down. A tech arrived with a wheelchair. As I was rolled toward the discharge desk, my reflection caught in the elevator mirror. Pale, worn, healing. But the tightness in my jaw told a different story. On the curb, I waited for the hospital shuttle, watching families arrive in clusters, arms full of blankets, hugs, promises of soup. My ride pulled up, not to take me to them, but to my quiet apartment, my space, my refuge. Inside, the silence felt thick. My phone buzzed. A video call from Mom. I let it ring out. Then came a text. "Your uncle is asking about you. Should I tell him you're fine?" For a second, I almost answered. Then I understood. This was their script. Perform concern for an audience while leaving the truth in the dark. I didn't reply. I opened my laptop instead. There were ways to make silence scream, ways to let the world see exactly what they had done without saying a single word that could be twisted. By the time the sun dipped low, step one was already unfolding. They had abandoned me at my most vulnerable. Soon, the world would know exactly what that looked like. The first step was subtle. I went silent. Not just ignoring calls, that was too normal. I became deliberately absent. Social media vanished. No posts, no reactions, no trace. In group chats, my name grayed out, unread, a ghost. I stopped showing up to their events, birthdays, dinners, little gatherings, no excuses. And I watched. People reveal themselves when they think you're gone. My sister flooded her feed with smiling photos from her birthday dinner, the one they all attended while I was being prepped for surgery. Captions about family love. Mom adding heart emojis to every post like nothing happened. That's when I knew disappearing wasn't enough. The truth needed to be seen. I started with Uncle Ray, the only relative who never forgot my birthday. I sent one message. "Did Mom tell you I had surgery?" His reply came fast. "No. What surgery? When? Are you okay?" The ripple began. Then a cousin, an aunt, a friend of the family. Each response echoed the same shock, the same disbelief. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't accuse. I gave dates, times, facts. Truth is harder to deny than any accusation. A week later, Mom finally called, not to apologize, but to scold. "You're telling people things that make us look bad." I almost laughed. "I'm telling the truth. You're making a scene." "No, Mom," I said quietly. "You made the scene. I'm just letting people replay it." She hung up. The next day, my sister messaged me. "Do you have to make this public? This is family business." I stared at the screen before responding. "You made it public when you posted smiling birthday pictures while I was in a hospital bed." Silence. The guilt was gone. I wasn't that child begging for their affection. I was someone new. Someone who understood the power of quiet, the weight of distance. Family reputations are delicate things, porcelain thin. Once they crack, the fracture spreads on its own. And I had no plans to fix theirs. By the end of the month, the whispers had started. People weren't calling me anymore, they were calling them. And every attempt they made to patch up the story only widened the break. Exactly the result I wanted. The escalation didn't come with shouting, it came with a single post. A photo of my hospital wristband on my kitchen counter beside a cold cup of tea. Caption: "Recovery is easier when you do it alone. Thankfully, I've had practice." No names, no pointing fingers, just truth with edges. Within hours, comments flooded in. Friends, coworkers, distant relatives asking what happened. The vagueness made them dig deeper. Then calls came from numbers I didn't know. One from my aunt in New Jersey, someone I'd heard from twice in 5 years. She said, "I talked to your mother. She says you're exaggerating. Tell me what really happened." So I did. Plain, direct, unembellished. She went quiet. "I'll call you back." Later that day, Mom tried calling again. I didn't answer. Instead, I posted another picture, a get well card a coworker left on my desk. Caption: "Sometimes the people you work with show up more than the people you share blood with." The comments doubled again, this time not questions, but reactions. Sympathy, outrage, recognition. Mom's texts shifted from anger to desperation. "Stop twisting things, you're hurting the family, you're being dramatic." But pain doesn't start when the truth is spoken. It starts when the act is committed. 3 weeks later, I received a message from Mrs. Alvarez, a family friend from childhood. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I didn't know they left you alone. I'll be speaking to your mother." That was the moment I realized the whispers had become a storm, and it was only just beginning. It was a slow, controlled burn spreading through every branch of our social circle. By the time my sister's engagement party rolled around, people were already looking at them differently. I didn't go, but the photos told me enough. Stiff smiles, fewer guests than usual, and comments under her posts that weren't the usual gushing praise. Reputation isn't destroyed in a single blow. It crumbles grain by grain until there's nothing left to hold. And I was just getting started. The sharper turn came with an invitation, one they didn't know I received. A local community group I'd volunteered with for years was hosting a charity gala. Normally, Mom would be front and center, shaking hands and pretending her life was spotless. This year, she wasn't even on the guest list. I was. When I arrived, I made sure to look like I'd never seen a sick day in my life. Black dress, gold earrings, hair pinned back. And I didn't arrive alone. I walked in with Mrs. Alvarez on one arm and Uncle Ray on the other. The same people who'd been quietly calling her, asking why she had abandoned her daughter in a hospital bed. It was a visual she couldn't control. Word spread quickly. "I thought you were close with your mom," someone said in a hushed tone. "We used to be," I replied simply. Then I excused myself before they could ask more. Let them fill in the blanks. 2 days later, the local paper ran a photo from the event. Me, front row at the auction table, laughing at something Mrs. Alvarez said. My mother's absence was noticeable. The text from Mom came less than an hour after the paper hit mailboxes. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't reply. Instead, I sent an email to the gala's organizers thanking them for the wonderful evening and offering a $500 donation in honor of the unsung heroes who stand by you when others won't. They posted the thank you on their Facebook page, tagging me. By now, the cousins, the neighbors, the church ladies, they'd all started choosing sides, and silence was never louder than when someone you once gossiped with stops acknowledging you in public. The breaking point came in the form of a voicemail from my sister. Her voice was tight, rehearsed. "Mom's really upset. You've made this a whole thing. You should apologize before it gets worse." I played it twice, then deleted it. Apologize for surviving alone? For speaking truth without raising my voice? No. Instead, I sent my sister a single photo, the hospital wristband from months ago, and a one-line text. This is where it got worse. By the time summer ended, I'd been invited to 2 more community events they weren't included in, both hosted by people they once considered allies. Their smiles in public had tightened into brittle lines. The beauty of a slow public unraveling is that you never have to raise your hand to push. You just remove your support and gravity does the rest. And the fall had only just begun. Symbolic revenge isn't loud. It's deliberate. And mine began with an auction paddle. The fall charity auction was the kind of event my mother used to live for. Wine glasses clinking, polite applause after every bid. I hadn't been in years, but this time I made sure I was seated at the center table, surrounded by people she once called our circle. Halfway through the night, the MC announced the next item, a weekend stay at the lakeside cabin my parents used to rent every summer. The place where my mother would parade us in matching outfits for photo ops, then spend the rest of the trip reminding me how I didn't quite fit the image. I raised my paddle without hesitation. The bidding went back and forth. 200, 300, 4. At 500, the other bidder dropped out. Sold. A few claps, a few smiles, and one curious look from the mayor's wife. "I thought your family still rented that place," she asked softly. "Not anymore," I said. "Guess things change." That weekend, I went to the cabin alone. I took photos. Sunlight on the water, steam curling from my coffee cup, and my bare feet on the dock. Each one captioned simply, "Some traditions are better without the ones who ruin them." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't have to. By Monday, I'd received 3 texts from my sister and 1 from Mom. "You're being cruel. You know this is hurting us. Take those posts down." I left them on read. What they didn't know was that the tab-in wasn't the only auction I'd won that night. Another item, less flashy but far more symbolic, a handcrafted quilt made by the women's shelter downtown. The same shelter I'd donated to quietly for years, before they decided I owed them my earnings. 2 weeks later, I attended the shelter's winter fundraiser and donated the quilt back in my family's name. The director thanked the Hale family publicly from the stage. People clapped. My parents weren't there to collect it. That photo, me standing under the banner with the quilt, made it into the local paper again. By now, I didn't have to speak for people to understand. The pattern was clear. I was living well, connected, respected. They were absent. It's a strange thing watching people who once claimed ownership over you lose their grip. They keep reaching, but there's nothing left to hold. And I was about to take away the last thread tying me to them. The final thread wasn't money. It wasn't property. It was the last name we all shared. It had been mine since birth, their stamp on every form, every school trophy, every bill I paid. For years, I thought it was unshakable, part of me. But sitting in the county clerk's office that grade Tuesday morning, pen in hand, I realized it wasn't. It was just ink on paper. The woman behind the glass looked up from my form. Reason for the change? I smiled. Personal. 2 weeks later, my new driver's license arrived. No more hail, no more shadow of their ownership. I'd chosen my grandmother's maiden name. Strong, simple, mine. The first time I saw it in print, I felt the weight slide off my chest. I didn't announce it. I let them find out the way they found out everything now, secondhand. It happened at the bank. I was finalizing paperwork for my new condo downtown when the loan officer, a mutual acquaintance of my mother's, mentioned it casually over lunch with her. She must have remarried, my mother guessed. My sister corrected her. She didn't. She just changed it. They called that night. 21 missed calls by morning. The voicemail swung between guilt and fury.
After everything we've done, you'd erase us like this. This is humiliating. You're making a scene. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent the shelter a fresh donation under my new name, a name they'd never touch, never claim, never twist. The receipt went up on the shelter's social media page with a photo of me and the director. The caption read, "Our community is stronger when we stand by each other." Within a day, it had more likes than any posts they'd made all year. People started asking questions. Not to me. I was untouchable now. But to them. Why weren't they in my life? Why hadn't they been there at the hospital, at the auction, at the shelter fundraisers? And I knew the truth was cornering them in a way I never could. That's the thing about quiet revenge. It doesn't shout. It waits. It lets time and proof stack until the picture paints itself. And when it does, you don't have to lift a brush. All I had to do was sign my name. My new name. One last loose end remained, not for me, but for them. Something that would make sure their version of me, the one they'd controlled for years, could never be revived. That part would happen in public. The invitation arrived in early spring, the city's annual community awards banquet. I'd be nominated for outstanding service for my work with the women's shelter. I knew exactly who else would be in a room. My parents never missed this event, back when they were still being photographed for the society pages. They'd sit front and center, shaking hands like royalty. This year, I requested my table be at the very front, one row closer than theirs. The night of the banquet, the ballroom glittered with glassware and soft jazz. I wore a deep emerald dress that caught the light with every step. The director of the shelter sat to my left, the mayor to my right. Halfway through dinner, the host took the stage and began the awards. When my name was announced, my new name, there was a brief pause in the room. People glanced at my parents, then back at me. I walked to the stage slowly, deliberately. The applause swelled, cameras flashed. The host handed me the award and motioned for me to speak. I looked out at the crowd and directly at my mother. "I stand here tonight," I began, "not because I had everything given to me, but because I learned how to build from nothing. Some of us are lucky enough to be born into support. Others have to find it along the way. I found mine in the most unexpected places, and I'll spend the rest of my life making sure no one feels they have to go through life alone." The room went still. I smiled, holding the plaque high. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother's jaw tighten. My father stared at his plate. After the ceremony, people came up to congratulate me. A few asked quiet questions about my name change, my work, my story. I didn't answer everything. I didn't need to. The silence said enough.
The next morning, the city paper ran a front-page photo of me on stage, the award in my hand, captioned, "Marissa Quinn receives Outstanding Service Award." That photo went everywhere, online, on social media, in the lobby of the shelter. It wasn't fame I wanted. It was a razor. The last trace of the version of me they'd tried to own was gone, replaced by someone they couldn't reach, couldn't claim, and couldn't rewrite. I didn't send them the article. I knew they saw it, and for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't care what they thought. That was the real revenge. Not the award, not the name, not the whispers in the room. It was the freedom of knowing I'd already won.